from Boston and beyond. Heat981fm.com and iHeartStation.
Tonight's episode of Conversations with Coach La is brought to you by Virtual Services by Shamina Austin. Do you need to delegate some tasks, or are you looking to declutter a space? Well, assign it to her. Introducing Virtual Services by Shamina Austin. She's currently accepting new clients and offers a variety of back office services depending on your needs. Contact Shamina at 857-273-1528, 857-273-1528, or email shaminaaustin@gmail.com for more information.
Conversations with Coach La.
Coach La, your favorite neighborhood therapist. Having real hard convos, contrasting pessimists. Generational trauma explored, broach delicate. Getting to the root of the pain, healing impediments. Every week signs copay, free lessons. Bet on self, trust the process, no questions. Feel your feels, journey to be healed, no stressing. Conversations with Coach La's now in session.
Heat981fm.com and iHeartStation.
Nancia, Smokehouse, it's the urban heat. Shout out to Coach La.
Coach LA, it's time to listen to conversations that's gonna keep you winning. Sunday nights at 10 p.m. on the urban heat, just calling. Conversations with Coach La, 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 Coach La, 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 la. If you got something on your mind, you can call in, you can hit a line. She the realest, ooh, she the realest. You can tap in, I will always get a business to empower you so that you can do every and anything that you want to. Kicking it with Coach LA, it's time to listen to conversations that's gonna keep you winning. Sunday nights at 10 p.m. on the urban heat, just calling. Conversations with Coach La, 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 Coach La, 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 la.
What's going on, beautiful people? What's going on, beautiful people? Welcome to another episode of Conversations with Coach La La La. I hope y'all are having a beautiful day, beautiful Sunday. Happy Sunday to all of you amazing individuals. I got some extra sound going on in here. Laptop is also giving feedback, but happy Sunday and happy Mother's Day to all of the beautiful mothers, caregivers, nurturers, bonus moms, surrogates, auntie moms, all of the people that's out there mothering people. I just want to say happy Mother's Day, and I also want to send some love and light to everyone who has lost their mom or just is going through it. Today's a tough day for a lot of individuals, and I want to recognize that Mother's Day is tough. And it's interesting because you can be a mom, as I am myself, and then also have a mom that you may or may not be as close to or may not be here. And it's it can be bittersweet, that dual reality of it's a happy day and a sad day all at the same time. So once again, all those that are getting through today, I just want to, stand in solidarity with you and send you some love and light. And I hope you got loved up on today. And I hope you gave yourself some grace and some self-compassion. Sending out some birthday love to my really good friend, Michael Warrior Bonds, turned 60 years old. So I want to say happy birthday to them, to them. Geez. There was a couple of birthdays that transpired. So happy birthday to everybody who had a birthday, because I can't list everyone, but 60 is a milestone. So shout out to him. I also participated in the Art of Poetry this past Thursday, and I was one of the featured poets. So shout out to Poems Boston and the Poetic Circle and the National Black Dog Museum. So I had a really busy week leading up until today. I want to send some love to my son. We had some quality time and watched movies today, which was something that I had really been wanting to do. And my son's 19 now, so he ain't got time for his mama, but he made time for me today. So that made me feel really special that we got a chance to just sit and hang and watch some movies. So I know you guys always say, I'll give y'all the update, let y'all know, but y'all came to sit on the virtual couch. So tonight's conversation is going to be powerful, impactful, and triggering to some people, because people's personal journeys often take a lot of courage to talk about. So tonight we're going to be able to step into someone's personal story that is going to be moving and also could be triggering to some. So let me tell you a little bit about her. So Tonia Magras, she is the Chief Operating Officer of Hill Bay Productions, where she serves the role of producer, director, and editor. She is a multi-award winning executive who takes pride in being a multifaceted and multi-dimensional creator of projects that range from sports, arts, politics, and popular culture. She has over 34 years of production experience, which began at PBS, which is a flagship television station, WGBH TV in Boston, and continued with her own production company, which she and her husband, Gregory, established in January 2025. Now, Tonia is let me just say this, a 7 Emmy Award nomination. She has 7 of them things and 3 wins for various documentaries and production work. So she is nothing to play with, and such an honor to have someone of her caliber on Conversations with Coach La. Shout out to Danielle Laurent, Mr. DL, for making this connection. So I am super excited to bring her on the show tonight, because she has a new project that she has put together that is a depiction of her own true story, which I watched. And I tell you, I went through a series of different emotions, thinking about her as a young woman, as now a full-grown woman, reliving that, thinking about that, and then deciding to talk about it and put it in a visual aid so we can all see. So I'm actually going to play a little clip so you guys can see it before I bring her on the stage. Let me just make a couple of adjustments here for all those individuals who are not able to see it. You will hear it, but I'm going to play a clip for you right now. Let's welcome to Conversations with Coach La, Miss Tonia Magras. How are you?
I am doing well. Happy Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's Day to you. Happy Mother's Day.
Yes.
Thank you for joining me on Mother's Day. It's interesting. I'm bad with holidays, and I didn't even realize it was Mother's Day when I booked it until after the fact. And so I really thank you for taking the time, because I know you have your family, and Mother's Day is a day that we tend to want to rest, which I did. I did a lot of rest today. I hope you got a chance to rest.
I did. It was actually a really good day, and I'm glad it didn't rain out here. I'm in Central Mass, and so we got some sun. It wasn't very warm, but the sun was there, and that just felt amazing. So yeah. relaxed, hung out with my kids. They, talking smack about me and making me laugh and do what they do. When you have adult children, it's a different relationship, as you know, right? So
Yes, I have a 19-year-old. I was so excited. He said, "You want to watch movies?" I'm like, "Yes."
wow, yeah.
Absolutely. I was in my mind, I was going to take a nap, but you don't do this all the time. So let me get my energy together. So yeah, we watched movies today. Speaking of that, you being a film producer, what do you want the people to know that's beyond what's on your bio? Because I mean, you got almost 5 pages from awards and accolades. You are a busy lady, and so renowned. And I'm glad to have made your acquaintance and learned more about your work. But you not only write, you direct, you produce. You are just, a woman of many gifts behind the camera and beyond. But beyond that, what do you want people to know about Tonia?
Every night I watch the Golden Girls to go to sleep. That is my show. It will forever be my show. It's just something about, like, I guess it's like just the sisterhood, because they all came, and if you haven't watched the Golden Girls, just watch a couple of episodes, it's
Girls, wow.
it is just like, and I know I can like say all the lines by heart now, but it's something about a sisterhood that I think that so many of us don't have. And so for me, I feel like I am going to sleep listening to my sisters and, just talking and feeling good. And it also helps me, at the end of the day, just to kind of clear my mind, because I do have a lot on my plate. And sometimes I just need that something just to not have to think about and have it have a little bit of comfort as well. And it's still funny, and I still laugh at some of the stupidest jokes that they've been telling it's been on for years, for decades. But that is, that's my go-to. And God bless my husband, because he is so used to listening to the theme of the Golden Girls every single night as I go to bed. But that's one thing that you can know about me.
I definitely wouldn't have guessed that. I had someone else come on who watched, was it Murder, She Wrote, and Crime Stories. And I'm like, before you go to sleep, I would be watching that. But hey, to each their own. Everybody got their thing.
That's true. I do love Dateline, but Golden Girls is my last thing that I turn to before I go to sleep. Put the timer on, and I'm usually out by like one episode.
Well, I would say that I probably just like having the TV be in the background, so I don't feel like I'm in complete silence. I like to just have the background noise.
Yeah.
So watching me could be anything really. I don't really have to have a particular show on.
And I think for some of us, my husband can actually go upstairs, say goodnight, put his head down, and within 20 seconds he's snoring. I can't do that. It takes me a while to turn my brain off. And so for me, like you said, just having that background noise and not having to focus on too much and just getting my mind distracted from things is just amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's a good tip for everybody who is looking for a tip. So as you know, on this show, right, we talk about therapy. We talk about all things that happen in life when life is lifing. It's been manifested out of my actual practice as a psychotherapist, how to bring therapy where everybody can sort of touch it, feel it, experience it. Because sometimes, especially in the Black community, we are not necessarily encouraged or we don't really want to go to therapy because something got to be wrong with you. And I found that it's just a conversation. So that's the whole idea of Conversations with Coach Laz, to just really be able to have some conversations about difficult things to make it tangible, digestible. And so tonight we're going to be talking about not only your projects and your background, but a really tough topic, boundaries. And boundaries are not just about saying no, they're also about saying yes, right? And yes to yourself. And so in this episode, we really want to start to kind of dig into your world a little bit and talk about how you were able to set boundaries, and especially after what transpired, which is the story behind Do You Remember Me, without guilt, shame, or apology, because it takes a lot of courage to tell your story. So in this season, we started off with breaking barriers. We really wanted to take a look back. Now, that was series 1. So now in series 2, we are doing the self-work. And I always tell people, like, doing the actual work is sometimes not very easy. No. So you think about the process of telling your story. How did that play into doing the work and setting the boundary to be able to step out, and also tell us about what inspired you to have the courage to Do You Remember Me?
Faith is very important in my life. And I think that things happen for a reason, things that are beyond our ability to understand sometimes, and our ability to even try to control. And I think that we have a very hard time with lifing sometimes, because it's like, why me? Why is this happening to me? And it can be something like, getting a flat tire on the way to work, or missing the bus, or, whatever that scenario is. And so I really try and hold my faith very close to me, and really understand that there's so much that we don't have control over. So when I was contacted by the person who was responsible for my rape over 38 years ago, and this is in the film, and you will see it in the film, and there is a trigger warning at the beginning that we deal with some sexual assault and sexual violence. Although I do have to say, we did not shoot a rape scene. So, that was something that I did not want to do. But it is based on my true story that happened May 4th, 1987, 38 years ago. And something kind of took over, because I really had put it away for a really long time. I just stuck that in that deep part of me that I didn't want to talk about, that I didn't want to have to bother with. I drank every day for 30 years, and alcohol really was able to make everything go away that I didn't want to deal with. And I was able to have fun and be happy, and, always be in a good mood and having a great time. And, it was all that mask that you put in front of yourself. And so when I get contacted by Dale, it really kind of shifted my energy a bit. I had stopped drinking several years ago, so it'll be 8 years this November, and I really had to kind of think about my power. And what I mean by, and I know I feel like I'm contradicting myself, but you can have power over your behavior and what you do in this world and what you put out in this world. You don't have control over what happens, but you do have control over what you do. And so for me, it was an opportunity to think about something that had been paralyzing me for so many years, and I didn't want it to have control over me. Now I say that, and it was the hardest thing that I think I've had to do yet in my life. And, I had an amazing support system, my pastors, my husband, my family, just the people around me who really encouraged me and really lifted me up, because I was a mess on set. I was a mess. I cried every single day. But we got it done. And when the film was done, I was able to say, okay, I have a little bit of my power back, because now it's my story. Now I am telling my truth. I am saying what happened to me. I am telling the world what happened to me. And, for a lot of people, they may not understand. I had family members that didn't know. I had friends who didn't know. My children haven't been able to watch the film because they're very close to me, and it's hard for them. But for me, it's really part of my taking my power back. And every time I have an opportunity like this to talk about it, I feel that. It doesn't make it easy. It's never going to be easy. But I think that every opportunity I have is one step closer to my healing.
Thank you for sharing that. I mean, again, for all those that are listening, you are listening to Conversations with Coach La. I know most of y'all know that, but we get new listeners all the time. And it's very exciting to know I'm international. So thank you for everyone who shares the live, invites new people to come and join us on the virtual couch. It's not an easy thing, right, to tell your story, and it's triggering for many of us, especially with everything going on with with Diddy, P. Diddy, Sean Combs, his full name, and folks feeling like, well, why now? Why now? And if you didn't tell it for so long. And there's a piece in the story, I don't know how true, and you can help me too, how true it is to actually what happened, that you actually do name the person and tell, and because of his pedigree and his future, it was sort of minimized. And I hear a lot of women have that story. So again, guys, if this is triggering for anyone, please know that you can reach out for support. I will make sure I put the line for Rape Crisis Center in your area. Also, just 211 here is a number you can call for support. Of course, you can reach out to me for therapy if this conversation is at all bringing up things for you. But for a lot of people, that happens. You tell and no one really believes you. And so what are you supposed to do? Life goes on, things move on. And as you said, you were drinking. I think a lot of people utilize substances to deal with trauma. So what helped you to come out of that space and to get the courage to actually put it on screen?
It was bigger than me. I hear a lot of the chatter that is going around and has been going around since the arrest of Sean Combs, and people are like wondering, like, well, why did they wait so long? Why didn't they report it as soon as it happened? Why didn't they do this? Why didn't do that? And that's such a dangerous road to go down, because you don't know what it takes to have that courage. You don't know what it takes to be able to say out loud that this is what happened to me, and then nonetheless go into detail and talk about the this and the that, and and the amount of people that were involved in there were 4 involved in my rape. And so it's really, really dangerous to start to, question why someone who has survived something so horrific, why they didn't speak up and come out sooner. I also say that there's strength in numbers. And I think that what we're seeing now with Diddy's case is that, Cassie had the courage to come out and stand up to him. And that initial case was settled out of court, and we know that all the accusations now are just accusations, and he hasn't been accused of anything. But what that did open up for are all these other people to come forward. And mind you, the majority of them are anonymous. Like, they don't want their names out there. There's a lot of trepidation in terms of, even walking into a courtroom and telling your story. And for me, when you watch the film, you'll see kind of what happened to me. And when I was confronted with the police officers, they were called on my behalf once I got to the hospital. And I just decided that the only thing I wanted to do was get home to my mom. That's all I wanted to do. I didn't want to have another conversation. I didn't pack up any of my stuff. I just left. I just left and never went back. Never went back to the city. Never went back to spend any time. It's something that I've never had interest in doing. And I've been called courageous, and I think it was just time for me to get this out of me. I didn't want to die with this story inside of me. I really didn't. I also didn't want to have 5,000 conversations about what happened to me, right? So, I tell my story in this way, and then, you want to ask me something afterwards, and very little people, they don't have much. I mean, they offer their comfort, and they offer their, support of me, and that's great. But it takes so much. I spent a lot of time in prayer. I spent a lot of time being re-triggered, a lot of time in trauma, a lot of time wanting to just open up that bottle of vodka again, because I knew that all these feelings would go away. My therapist on speed dial, like, all the time, I mean, it is, being healthy emotionally and mentally is our biggest challenge, I think, as women of color, as people of color. I always say we don't have enough African American or Latino therapists in our community, and that's maybe why people don't want to seek out help, is because there's so much you don't have to explain when you are within your community and within your culture. And but it took a lot. It took a lot, and I'm still kind of working through it, because it is out there. I'm still working through it, but my support team is amazing, and I'm just so grateful for that. I'm so grateful for that.
And again, this is 38 years ago, right? Mm-hmm. Correct, to be correct. 4 people, and in the film, this is a guy who you considered a friend.
Yes.
Right. And that you felt comfortable and safe around. And that is typically the narrative, right? Where it's not normally a stranger. It's often someone that you are comfortable with that you would never expect that would violate you, that would assault you. And I think those are the hardest ones to talk about or to tell, because people really are like, how did that happen? Well, are you sure? What did you do? Did you give them, did you send the wrong message? Again, this could be triggering. You might have been being fast. That's a big one for the Black community. Well, you were being fast. You shouldn't have been, alone with a guy. And, well, what did you have on? Or just, did they think, it's always usually turned back on, usually the woman, versus like, what the heck is going on in these guys' minds that they even thought that was okay. Which is why I bring up boundaries, because I think when you're violated like that, sometimes you can get hyper focused on safety and you don't trust anyone, right? So how did you move into, now you have a loving husband, which in the film you showcase him being there for you and also observing it, and just the question of what can I do to help you? Like, he was just very nurturing in the film. How do you get to that space? Because for some women, that's one of the hardest things, is to reconnect, find safety, and to start a new relationship without therapy.
Yeah. Well, frankly, Greg is the only relationship that I had as a sober person. And I was drinking when we met. We've been together now 16 years. So I was still drinking when we met. And he would pray for me to stop drinking. He would just pray for me to get out of it. So it was the first relationship that I dealt with sober, and that has had some effects on me, because I there's nothing to mask. I have to deal with everything as it is. I don't walk alone at night. I don't walk in spaces by myself. And this, again, this is 38 years ago, right? And this is still who I am. If I am somewhere and it is nighttime and I don't feel safe, my husband tells me to stay where I am, and he comes and he gets me, no matter where I am in the state. And so, and I don't know if that goes away. My hyper sense of danger is still very much right there. And I look at people 2, 3, 4 times, right? And I, don't walk behind me. It's just, I'll do things. I'll cut into a building at school just to, keep somebody from walking behind me. And that's the trauma, but it's real. And it's real for me because we know what the statistics are. And they're mind-boggling. I did have someone in my family ask me when they found out, and this was pretty soon after the rape, asked me what I was wearing, and it was a male in my family. And I just felt like it was happening all over again. And I think that what we have to be really careful about is that, the media has over-sexualized African-American people for decades. We have over-sexualized our women in terms of the roles that they play, in terms of the music that they sing, in terms of how they appear in different facets of media. We have over-sexualized our men, made them aggressive, made them predators in the movies and the music and everything. So we have kind of created this narrative. And we have to stop doing that. And I think when we can stop doing that, we can really sit down, cross genders, and have conversations about what it means to feel safe with each other and what it means to feel supported and not threatened by each other. But, it's a $1 billion industry. And I won't watch films that have any type of sexual assault type of narrative to it. Golden Girls, that's my lane, right? Because yes. I just can't deal with
lighthearted.
Yeah.
And it's a heavy topic. In my practice, 90% of my clientele is women. And I would probably say about 60, maybe 75% of them have a story of sexual assault in some shape or fashion. So it is more prevalent than you know. And often it doesn't look or show up the way people think. Mm-hmm. A lot of times there's a lot of disassociation. There's a lot of not respecting the boundary and the lack of, self-awareness in terms of body and knowing what you want, what you don't want, and just almost shutting down where there is no real, not necessarily a verbalized no, but
Yeah.
they're also not really present or
Yeah.
enjoying. And there's literally a disconnect between them and the partner.
Yeah.
And I often say this with a lot of sexual activity, it often, because we have sexualized, you pointed that out, that a lot of people are not even really connected sexually. Sometimes it's just purely a way to cope or to deal with something. It's not really that true connection. So often people are not really zoned in on the other person, what the other person is feeling, because they're using it as a release for themselves. You are just an object in the experience. So I think if you're constantly using sex in that way, it's so you can disconnect that that's a human being that's actually involved in this process with you. So I invite people to really be present across the board, more self-aware about why they do what they do, how they utilize sex, whether or not, you are safe with your partner, even talk about what you like, what you don't like. So many people are engaging in sexual activity and they can't even have a conversation really with the person that they're having sex with. We take our clothes off, but are we really vulnerable? Are we really truly emotionally available to one another? Do we have the emotional capacity beyond the physical act? And often I think the answer is no.
Yeah.
And so that's a whole nother topic. But some of the things that I did find, because I did look up some statistics too, was that 74% of women report feeling guilty when saying no at work, at home. And so why do I bring this and even tie this into sexual assault or being raped or just anything involving this is that if we already struggle with really being able to say no, like even not putting ourselves in certain positions where we do have power, sometimes we don't exercise that power that could have possibly kept us safe. So we get that sense that we don't want to go into someone's space or get in someone's car, but we don't want to seem like we don't trust them.
Crazy, right? We
About
don't.
their response and what they think, that we ignore that I don't really know you like that. And so you can be mad at me. And often this idea of not allowing, or the other person being mad at you, or you not seeming cool or nice, or them feeling away, you disregard your own feelings and you push it aside. So I wanted to bring boundaries into it because I feel like that is like the first step, I think, to getting one's power back, is to be okay with someone else not liking you saying no, right? No, I don't want to go there. No, I'm not comfortable being around you. I don't feel safe. And let them deal with asking you more questions or making sure you feel safe, especially after something like this.
And I'm so glad you brought this up because, it was a few years before I was really able to talk to Greg about a lot of the things that made me feel uncomfortable. And there was something about him that was very different from relationships that I had, where I felt really safe with him. And I just knew that this was a man that was never going to hurt me. And it took me a while to get to that point, but I really felt that with him. And we have to put ourselves first, because if you're with someone that really loves and really cares for you, and now I'm just talking about the home stuff, right, with this statistic, if you with someone who really loves and cares for you, they're not going to weaponize sex against you. They're going to figure out what it is they can do, or whether you both need to do, or both need to be in therapy, or whatever that is. They're going to help you figure it out, but they're not going to use it as a weapon. And if they do, that's not love. It's not love. And you're absolutely right. Feeling like, well, if I say no, or, okay, let me just get this over with. And then maybe, they won't ask for sex again or something like that. And that's not good. That's not being present. That's not putting yourself first, because we all have the right to do that. We all have the right to put ourselves first and put our boundaries around ourselves. And what should guide us is having that partner with us that can understand it and know when to maybe back off, give space, or know how to approach me. You know, there's a part in the film where Nikki, who's the name of the woman who plays me in the film, and you know, she's in the kitchen, and Greg, the husband, goes up behind her and just puts his hand on her shoulders, and she just jumps. And I remember that happening with my husband the first time, and he was so sorry. Like it was, he really locked in on that moment and apologized and said, I will never do that to you again. Because again, and it's not, I mean, I knew he was the only person in the house with me. It's not really about that, but because of whatever that may be going on at that time, and then you come up behind me and put your hand on me, like, so, and we were able to talk about that. And so, and we have our love language, and we also have, and we know how to communicate, and he knows how to communicate around me so that he knows he's not causing any trauma to me. But that takes a great deal of communication. And you said it, it's like sometimes it's easier to just shut up and go through the motions than to really say, I don't feel comfortable with this right now. And I can't tell you why, because I don't understand it myself, but this is what I need for me right now.
Yeah. I think that was one of the pieces that stuck out to me, is that you were able to depict on screen the examining. Well, first the trigger, right?
Mm-hmm.
The triggered moment and what that looked like, having something happen that brings back a memory that's suppressed, right?
Right.
And then being able to sit in those emotions and not just run from it. But there was a piece where you allowed her to cry, to scream, and to just sit and flush that through before she came and reconnected with her family, which allowed her to realize, you know what, that was the past and I'm safe and I can connect now. And I thought that as a therapist, I was like, that is what you would want to have happen, is a person to give you space, to check in on you, but for you to allow yourself to actually be able to realize that you're bothered and to make a decision on what you need, take the minute to process, and then be able to reconnect, and it not completely ruin, or you to go downstairs and yell at your husband, yell at your kids, which is often what people do, is that when they have a moment like that, they deflect and start to, you know, do reaction formation, where they go and they bleed on everyone else, and they still don't really communicate what's happening and why they're acting this way. So I love that you did that, and that was demonstrated. One of the other things that I found, which was from our Harvard Business Review, was that strong boundary setting is linked to higher emotional intelligence and leadership effectiveness. And I know for some people, it's not all about business, but I think even in your homes and with your partner, you have to be able to know how to lead. And leadership is connected to communication too, which I think is connected to emotional intelligence. Being able to know how to say, I'm not in a good space right now, I need a minute. And being unapologetic about that, because I think often we don't want to say that because what is the other person going to think? Or, you know, they're going to ask me more questions I'm not ready to answer. So we'll say we're fine, but we're not. It shows up in our body language. It comes out somewhere else. So I just really love that you are, one, bringing up these hard things, because if it's not a rape, it could be just a awful experience that happened in your past that creates some level of post-traumatic stress disorder. It doesn't always have to be a sexual assault, but anything that disrupted you, your functioning and your emotional, I say, safety, you could be triggered by.
That's right.
some people don't like to be yelled at, right? Like you said, don't come up behind them. Just growing up in the city in general, I think often a lot of us are easily triggered and have seen some scary things
Yes.
that we had no control over seeing, you know?
Mhm.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I lived in Roxbury in Dorchester for about 30 years before we moved out here to Central Mass. And, you know, one of the first nights here and just going to sleep and not hearing anything freaked me out. Like there was no sirens, there were no people walking down the street having loud conversations, you know, at 1 o'clock in the
Wait a
morning.
minute, it's too quiet. It's too quiet.
It's too quiet. It is too quiet. And the other thing is like, you know, there are no lights anywhere, right? Because like there's like just a bunch of like land and everything. And that really, you know, so I immediately just put like blinds up on all the windows around the house because I couldn't see what was out there. And I didn't feel like that when I was living in the city. But yeah, you know, and you touched on this, it's like this muscle memory, right? That, and when it's something different, you immediately have like some kind of reaction to it. And don't get me wrong, I love sleeping out here now, but it really took something to get used to, because then I was like hearing things that weren't there. Your brain is a very powerful tool.
Very powerful.
It can just do things that, you know, I don't question when people say, you know, oh, I saw a UFO in my living room. I believe them. Like your brain is just an incredible tool. And, you know, I use mine creatively, but it really can just kind of like play tricks on you. But, you know, it's important, you know, and yeah, it doesn't have to be sexual assault. It could be, you know, maybe someone hit you as a kid that, you know, for something that was just so minor. Maybe you dropped your cereal on the floor and you got, you know, a huge beating for it. Or, you know, maybe you walked in and saw something that you weren't supposed to see. Maybe something violent or, you know, otherwise. It's like these things are, you know, our brain, you know, I say it's like an ongoing tape recorder. We may not rewind and get to it, but it's always going to be there. And something may like, you know, just bring that right to the forefront at any point. But it's really important to get in tuned and understand what you can handle and what you feel like you can, and talk to someone about that.
Yeah, I would have to agree. It's interesting that you bring up all of those different things, because often a big one we miss is just things that are said to us verbally. Mm-hmm. I think those things stick and they stick for a long time. And I've often asked my clients when they hear certain narratives, negative self-talk, whose voice is that? Yeah. Because often it's tied to a particular person who said something to you that stuck with you for a really long time. You know, and one of the other things I found, which both creatives and women of color are disproportionately impacted by people-pleasing behaviors due to systemic and cultural expectations. Often women in general, we are taught to just kind of get along to get along. Historically not having a voice, historically sort of you need to be pretty and kind of be seen and not heard. So I think often all of those things play into being taken advantage of. And sometimes it's naiveness, and sometimes it's just complete fear. And also I would say the lack of muscle memory of not knowing how, right? Or never doing it, or never being encouraged to do so. So I think, you know, thinking about the fact of you being a storyteller and, you know, giving permission for other people to tell these stories and to come out with these stories with such courage, because like you said, now you get to tell the story. You get to decide how this narrative plays out, and it can be one of triumph versus one of just being a victim. And I think that that's ultimately what I wanted to communicate in tonight's episode, is that you get to tell your story how you want to tell it. And there's always going to be another side of it, and people are going to question it, but you know what you experienced and how you experienced it and how you felt about it. And that's important. But what do you think about the idea of facts? So, you know, we all have feelings, and feelings, as we know, they're valid, but they're not always grounded in facts. And facts become, well, who determines what's a factual thing? In my opinion, it's like, well, you were there, I was not. So you get to be the person who tells me what the fact is. How does that play into you telling of the story? And have you got any backlash for actually naming this individual? Have they come back or tried to say that it wasn't true?
No, I have not heard anything at all. There are a lot of people who knew me back then, who I am still very close with, who knew the story back then, and I've been consistent with my story ever since. And you know, bring it. You know, I mean, I have told my story since it happened to people in my family, to some very close friends. I have told the story over and over again. It has not changed. And when I was making this film last summer, I was introduced to a woman who, through a mutual friend, we connected, and she had the same exact story as I did 1 year later after my rape. Same people, same room, same, like, described everything. And we sat on the phone bawling for hours with each other. So, you know, it's not for me to determine who believes me or who doesn't believe me, who wants to watch the film, who thinks that it's you know, a bunch of bull or whatever. That's fine. I don't need you to support me. It's really not about that at the end of the day. But trauma can also affect how we remember things. And for a really long time, I have to tell you that there were things that I was remembering that I said to myself, no, that can't be true. It couldn't have been that bad. I was saying this to myself because there was no way my tiny 105-pound body could have lived through something like that. And when I finally had that conversation last summer, I have to tell you, there was a level of relief in me that just, it's hard to explain. But it was almost like God needed to let me know that, one, I wasn't the only one. I was not crazy. This did happen the way I remembered it. And he'll figure out the rest, frankly. You know, this isn't about vengeance for me. This isn't about, you know, going after anyone or whatever. This is about my truth. This is my story. This is my experience. This is what I want to share with the world, and let whomever think what they want. Again, they don't have to support me. But for the millions of Tonias out there who have yet to tell their story, I want this to be an inspiration to them. I want them to think, okay, right, you know, me too. Like I can do this, whether it's writing it down, or maybe you sing a song, or maybe you know, create a portrait, or whatever that is, that maybe you can do this too. And that's really who I care about.
You know, I always think about this, and this is the therapist in me, is how, you know, what these these men, these boys, because at some point these are someone's sons.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what are you thinking? What are you doing? And how do you get to this space that you do that and you're okay and you just move on with your life? What are you having to tell yourself that justifies that or makes you feel like, okay, that was okay? And the fact that the audacity that he could reach out after that and just be like, hey, what's up? How you doing?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
You know, and as a clinician, you know, I talk to all kinds of people, but I often wonder about these type of personalities and mentalities, especially when they show up very early on in people's lives, you know, and when you're that young and collectively I call that group think, you know, for people to get together and be okay with that. Like, what in the world were you guys thinking? And to do it again, you know, it just, I know that, you know, somebody, I think I was listening to Charlemagne the God, and he was talking about things were different back like when there was Freaknik, and it was just a different time. Somebody even framed it as rape culture. I remember my mother telling me, you know, don't be around guys, don't be by yourself, don't get in a car, you know, be mindful of your drink, be mindful of the girls you hang out, go in a group, make sure you never leave each other alone. And all of this is really stemming from stories like you, Tonia, right? Like there's more and more women that have had this happen to them that then try to teach the next generation of women how to be safe. And that's where how you dress, don't go down a dark alley, don't walk out at night by yourself. All of these things were told to us to give us one area of how we could protect ourselves, but at the same time, we shouldn't have to be afraid of someone coming and doing anything to us.
But even with that, we were told that as young girls. What was being said to the men?
That's my point, right? I'm saying the idea that you think because of what I wear or the fact that I've come over at 2:00 that means I've given you permission to do whatever to me, or I'm giving you a mixed message. That if we're kissing or touching and I say no, you take that as I'm playing hard to get, and my answer is really yes. All of these things, now I know I talk to my son about these things. If a girl is intoxicated, that's an absolute no-no.
Right.
I've even told him, be mindful of going into a girl's room or being in a room with a female alone by yourself. In general, you just don't even want any kind of misunderstanding in general. So I think men have to protect themselves too. Like, I think it is both ways, but it does, you know, just leave that lingering feeling of what are men told and how are they processing when they make these type of decisions? Because I know not every single one of them are okay, because a lot of them do go to therapy and later on are very regretful about things like this, right? They have daughters later on themselves, and they're hypervigilant about their daughters because of things that they've done. So I do think that this is just something that we have to continue to talk about and bring to the forefront for all of the reasons that we're saying now. I told you this conversation was going to go by really fast. 3 minutes left. And I always like to end it with, you know, giving some time to talk about your bet on self moments, which, I mean, of course, to a certain extent, I think we sort of talked about it already, right? But bet on self moments are those defining decisions where we choose healing, growth, or change, even when it's uncomfortable. And I know you've done that, you know, with this film. But have there been other moments, or maybe even a moment that's coming up for you that you want to share with the listeners?
So when I was raped May 4th, 1987, I left the campus the next day. And as I mentioned earlier in the interview, and I never went back. In 5 days, I'm finally finishing and walk across the stage and get my degree that I was never able to go back and finish before. So I graduate in 5 days with
Congratulations.
and that is just, and I know I'm going to bawl like a little girl. My daughter always says, oh, you're just such a little girl. You cry over everything. But you know what? It's been 38 years in the making, and I have never been more proud of myself than, taking these last 3 years and grinding down and doing what it is that I need to do so I can walk across that stage on Saturday and get my diploma. And yeah, it's an amazing feeling. And yeah, and that is my cherry on top of all of this. The film was a big step, but this to me is, and I'm going to have a party. We are going to be partying. I got to warn my neighbors. Like, we're going to be partying on Saturday. So sorry, neighbors, if you hear
it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Yes. Yes, and yes, and yes, and yes. Congratulations, Tonia.
Thank you.
Last but not least, boundaries, because we got to do Coach's Corner real quick, right? And that's just a moment to reflect on this conversation. So boundaries are a bridge to balance. And it's all about protecting your peace and honoring your truth and walking away from anything that threatens your growth. You really want to make sure that as you're thinking about boundaries, that it goes way beyond other people's opinions. And it's really about putting yourself first. So thank you, Tonia, for coming on the virtual couch.
Thank you.
I am so excited for you. Congratulations. And everybody else, you guys already know, make sure you tune in next week. We'll have another great guest, and meet me right back here for another episode. Y'all make sure y'all bet on self. And again, happy Mother's Day, everybody. Thank you, Tonia. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Kicking it with Coach LA, it's time to listen to conversations that's gonna keep you winning. Sunday nights at 10 p.m. on the Urban Eat, just call it Conversations with Coach La La La.